All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I am Jessie Kasner. I head up marketing over here at Flora Growth. Thank you all for being here as a part of our first of hopefully many State of Play series, where in each session we'll unpack a specific part of the broader cannabis and plant-based market. Before we begin, just a quick little reminder that many of our comments today will be considered forward-looking statements and are subject to numerous risks and uncertainties that may cause the company's actual results to differ materially from what has been communicated. Forward-looking statements made today are effective only as of today, and the company undertakes no obligation to update forward-looking statements. For a discussion of some of the factors that could cause our actual results to differ, please review the risk factors section on our registration statement on Form F1, recently filed with the SEC. We've updated the investor relations section of our website as well. So please feel free to visit that for the company's most recent releases. So to jump right into it, today we're going to be looking at the global CBD market with a special focus on the US, EU, and Latin America. Many of you submitted questions beforehand, so where I can, I will work to insert those questions as Luis presents, so we can have a real-time discussion that addresses some of your curiosities. And additionally, at the end, we'll have some time for more Q&A, so please feel free to use the question and answer feature at any point, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. And with that, I will introduce our speaker today. Many of you know him, Luis Merchen, our president and CEO of Flora Growth. Take it away, Luis.
Jessie, thank you so much. And I would be remiss if I don't officially welcome you to the team. You're an incredible addition, heading our marketing efforts out of Carlsbad, California. And of course, with us, we have our VP of Investor Relations, Evan Berryard, and Hannah Rexworth, Community Manager. So thank you for the entire group for setting up this webinar. So let's get started. So clearly, state of play of CBD and the global marketplace. As many of you know, CBD had a boom over the last half decade, and then because of the several macroeconomical conditions in terms of regulatory, COVID, and the cannabis industry as a whole, it's been impacted. And we're going to look deeply into what is happening today and what is the potential output for CBD into the future from our company's perspective. So first, let's start with regulation. Obviously, as you see on this slide, the map that is shared with us from our friends at Prohibition Partners shows that the regulatory landscape is very choppy on a global scale. There are some countries that allow for the legal use of CBD on some categories. You would say that the largest category in terms of use is that of topicals, but it's important to understand that it's incredibly fragmented. So when a company is trying to operate on a global scale, it's incredibly important that it's very aware of what is happening on each one of those geographies in which it operates. And to add to that level of complexity, COVID-19, which has affected every major industry worldwide, has also affected the cannabis landscape and the CBD landscape. Obviously, from many perspectives, and including, of course, the supply chain impact that has been had by COVID, but also there's been a deterioration of in revenues generated from CBD. That partly because of the closure of retail establishments that were the main source of revenue for CBD. However, the positive news here is that 20% CAGR year-over-year growth is expected in the upcoming years. And then lastly, in the industry, there's been a period of consolidation. Already 2021 was a record year in terms of consolidation in the cannabis market and CBD related companies. And 2022 is poised to be a supercharged year in terms of consolidation. So what is the problem with cannabis and with CBD specifically? Even though consumer sentiment is growing and there is a positive transition into the adoption in CBDs in its multiple categories of offering, there isn't enough information or enough quality offering out there to provide the level of confidence that consumers and patients need. Also, the offering is highly commoditized. And that just means that there's not enough quality, not enough quality certificates of quality and standards that have been put in place in order to ensure that the offering is one that provides a lot of confidence from a consumer and patient standpoint. And the business is incredibly fragmented. And some of the stats that are incredibly present a great opportunity, of course, are, for example, the share of CBD products that have illegal contents of THC. Somewhere over 64% of tinctures and oils have the inaccurate levels of THC in them. However, the opportunity here is the rapid growth. And as what you can see on this slide is that even though growth was stagnant over the last couple of years, growth will continue to accelerate on a 20% CAGR year over year over the next 5 years, which presents a great opportunities for companies that have been operating in the CBD space and have developed quality standards and great products that are available for consumers and patients today.
Luis, one question, and maybe you'll get into this, but like I said, I want to jump in when I can with questions that have come in. What, in your assessment of the overall landscape, what is contributing to that aggressive year over year growth in the global industry more broadly?
Well, the three main reasons that we discussed, Jesse, are incredibly important. The first one is the regulatory landscape is becoming more clear in some of the major economies in the world. When you look at changes in the European Union, last year alone in the month of April, the European Union allowed for CBD to be utilized in topicals, which is a tremendous move, as topicals are a great category for CBD. The changes that happen in the Farm Bill, of course, in the United States, and the changes that are happening in Latin America are all contributing to companies to have more access to the product categories. But there's also other categories that are becoming less stigmatized, in which the molecule is being utilized, and those are the ones that you see on this slide. So of course we're talking topicals, we're talking pharmaceuticals, and then dietary supplements or food additives is a great category of growth that we continue to see a tremendous rate of adoption and growth. And those we expect as regulatory framework continues to change, and as companies develop products that resonate with the consumers' minds and their needs, we're going to continue to see that growth in those three geographies.
Thanks.
Okay, and please feel free as the questions come in, Jesse. Let's keep the conversation going.
Will do.
So obviously what you see on this slide, and I'm not sure if everyone is looking at can see the slide. It seems pretty small from my perspective, but what we're trying to highlight here in this slide is there's a significant opportunity in terms of industries and product categories in which CBD can play. And those companies that do not operate under one lens, but operate on the multiple industries, will have the opportunity to have lower barriers of entry and penetrate those markets based on the product category that is being allowed to sell. Okay, so obviously the reach. So obviously the reach, the direct-to-consumer and e-commerce is leading the way in terms of rate of adoption. We have seen a tremendous move in terms of subscription models, ingestibles, and edibles. There's a significant opportunity for consumers to start adopting the CBD in these product categories, and that's a significant opportunity for companies to start developing products in all of these categories and create more revenue generating models. All right, so now let's talk about each one of the regions that are the most important geographies in terms of impact for CBD. Starting with the United States, there is a significant global opportunity. Of course, the biggest market share as of today is the United States, followed by the European Union and Latin America. Let's talk about each one of them individually. Okay, so the European Union and the United Kingdom is explosive growth. Obviously, there has been a significant product mix, as I mentioned. The topicals market in the European Union has been legalized, and now we're able to sell topical products, skincare products, and topicals into the European Union. That happened last April. But the product mix continues to change in the UK. The opportunity to sell CBD infused ingestibles is a significant opportunity for the market, and of course the market leaders continue to improve on a varied scale.
I'll jump in here really quick, and I'm combining a couple of questions that have come through, but how do you account for what in the major markets has been slower adoption of CBD in markets like the UK and Germany, where there seems to be a good amount of demand, but maybe that's not necessarily met with progressive regulation moving as quickly as some of us would like to see in CBD and in cannabis more broadly?
Yeah, I think you know, Jesse, is kind of like what's happening in the United States. In the UK, there's about 1.4 million medicinal cannabis users. There is clearly a need for the users of CBD in its various forms, and of course, broad regulatory change that will allow for the decriminalization of this molecule and other molecules in the cannabis will allow for the adoption. You also have to make it readily available for consumers and patients, and in order for you to be able to do so, there needs to be a meaningful regulatory reform.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Latin America. So let's discuss Latin America. Obviously, many changes that have happened. Brazil is going to be the most significant market in terms of revenue growth. It's the largest economy in Latin America. But there's a lot of positives that are happening here, starting with pharma and research. Medicinal cannabis out of Colombia, for example, is a significant opportunity. It's presenting a significant opportunity as government entities are investing resources to ensure that there's enough scientific-based research that supports the many benefits of the cannabis molecules. In countries such as Colombia, you're allowed to now do some marketing and provide consumers and patients with the benefits on a more open scale with regards to cannabinoids. And topicals are the leading category because they have very low barriers of entry. They have tremendous access for consumers in the entire marketplace. And in the United States, of course, we have a tremendous opportunity here with a regulatory standpoint. As many of you know, medicinal cannabis is legal in about 37 states today. Topicals are being able to be sold in about 45 out of the 50 states. The regulatory environment with the change of the Farm Bill allows for the selling of products that contain CBD with less than 1%, with less than 0.2% THC broadly. There's changes that are being evaluated, of course, and there's a lot of innovation that is coming on the ingestibles and edible space that will provide for opportunities for growth in this category.
And one question that just came in, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but as you work through sort of how Flora is addressing the global CBD market more broadly, there's a question just to give, as you go, a quick overview of where we are currently playing in the CBD space with deployed product on the ground.
Yeah, so this is attached to the overall cannabis space, and the overall CBD space is very broad, as we had just discussed. When you think about cannabidiol, it can be offered in many different ways. From a derivative perspective, you can offer the isolates, full spectrums, and broad spectrums on a wholesale perspective. And these raw materials are utilized in various forms for a variety of products and uses. So from a wholesale perspective, the global expansion of cannabis will continue to happen with those categories as well as dry flower. So we expect that from a growth pillar perspective, Flora will continue to play in the raw material transformation, in the exports of dry flower, in the distribution of full spectrum, broad spectrums, and isolates out of Colombia. The challenge here in the wholesale market is that the market will continue to commoditize over the long term. As the regulatory environment decreases, the exports of these types of raw materials and APIs will compress margins, and it will become a cost effectiveness kind of play. But it's an important one as companies that are able to grow at one of the lowest production costs in the world, such as ours, will have the market advantage. The second one, and this is our second growth pillar, is an end consumer product. And as you have seen early in the cannabis industry, the supply chain, the margins across the supply chain change based on the portion of the supply chain. The brands and products that get to the end consumer are right now taking advantage of the highest margins. They are receiving the highest margins across the entire industry. So products and companies that have brands and product portfolio that can be broadly distributed are actually having a lower barrier of entry, and also are achieving better margins. And then cannabis research from a pharmaceutical standpoint will support the development of formulations and medications that improve consumers' lifestyle. As you know, Jesse, the opioid pandemic, the treatment of ailments like pain, like insomnia, like anxiety, have been ailments that have affected humanity broadly. And these type of research and these types of formulations will present a great alternative for companies and consumers and patients that want to utilize a better alternative to, say, more addictive solutions such as opioids.
And another question, this was actually sent in beforehand, but the downward pressure on the price of wholesale CBD that's been going on, how do you see that working either to the benefit of Flora or potentially to the detriment, with any plans around wholesale distribution versus how we leverage that in our own supply chain?
It will. It's a great question, Jesse. I mean, clearly, over the last 4 to 5 years, there has been an overproduction of non-psychoactive flower and its derivatives. So several of the companies that were in this space overproduced inventories and were selling inventories at a loss in many cases. And that's what you have seen. For example, a kilo of CBD isolate drop from the several thousands to $250 a kilo. That in many cases is below production cost for many of the operators that are in North America and worldwide. That deterioration would mean that several of the players that are in this industry will cease to exist. We already saw a reduction in the number of licenses, for example, in North America, from the thousands to just several hundred for this year alone. And as those levels of inventory continue to decrease, there will be a more normal stabilization of what the price of CBD in its raw form and its wholesale form will be. Now, this is to say, Jesse, that at the end of the day, in the next 6 to 12 months, we expect a normalization on the price of CBD as in wholesale. And those companies, once again, that are able to grow at a very low production cost while maintaining the quality standards that are required in the industry, will be able to become market leaders.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is when we talk about, we were discussing, Jesse, the importance, especially when you're working in the wholesale environment, the importance of growing cannabis at a very low production cost. And when you look at the global marketplace, the growers that are in North America, the United States and Canada, are growing at a significant disadvantage. Obviously, they have to deal with the challenge of seasonality. They have to deal with the challenge of growing indoors and of course, labor force is very, very expensive. In Colombia, we're located in Bucaramanga. It's one of the most bountiful places in the world. Colombia is located alongside the equator, and the farm, our grow is 3,000 feet above sea level with constant winds of 3 miles per hour, where the climate is optimal for the grow of the cannabis plant flower. And then the natural resources and the agricultural know-how of cultivation allows for a high quality grow, organic, at a very low production cost. It's important to highlight, as I mentioned, that when it comes to CBD, the play is a very diverse one, but the focus should not be. What you see on this slide is the ecosystem of the entire Flora Growth product portfolio. But at the end of the day, we are a company that grows cannabis in an organic, high quality way, that is investing in scientific research to ensure that we develop great formulations and provide some alternatives, wellness alternatives to patients, and then we develop products to the end consumer, anchored by our powerful brands and our powerful design. And this ecosystem is supporting those three initiatives. Once again, the margins across each one of these three pillars of growth are different, and because we're able to play in the three of them, we're able to access the global marketplace in a more easier way.
And I have inside information. I know what you're going to talk about next, but there have been a few questions that have come through about our competitive advantage in this space, and how we look to set ourselves apart with some of the other competitors who are either focusing exclusively on the THC side of things, or people who are playing in CBD more broadly. And so I think this is a great highlight of the way that we are diversifying our supply chain to ensure that we are reaching people at every touch point. And Louise, I know you're going to dig in a little bit more, so I have some more detailed questions on a few of these as we go forward.
Great. So we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar the importance of high quality manufacturing. The industry is fragmented and the quality standards are not there. It is very important that any of the facilities that are operating in the cannabis space and that are actually being a source for raw materials or end products have all the certifications and the specific requirements to comply with local standards, but also with global standards. An example of those is, of course, Flora Lab, where we have a manufacturing facility that manufactures medications, over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, as well as phytotherapeutics and dietary supplements. This facility is 60,000 square feet. It's located in Colombia, which presents a great opportunity cost in terms of production, and it has 3 GMP certifications, which means that we can utilize the majority of the product portfolio developed here to export it globally.
A question that we received here, just sort of on our lab, there was a question about the INVIMA filing previously and some clinical trials that we are looking to hopefully get approved and move forward with. Would this be the lab ideally that we would look to lean on for some of those formulations potentially?
It would depend. Ideally, we would want it to be that way. We're partnering. Flora is a global institution. It's a global company, and we're partnering with medical institutions and research facilities worldwide. Of course, several of you know that Dr. Annabelle Manalo Morgan, who is a researcher out of Vanderbilt in Nashville, works very closely with the scientific community worldwide. We launched a clinical trial out of the University of Manchester, working with the NHS out in the UK, and we're now working closely with INVIMA and a couple of very, very meaningful institutions in Colombia. The decision will be made after the results of our clinical trials come in. But what's exciting about this is that the medical community and the scientific community is extremely interested in the benefits of the over 100 molecules that are out there in terms of the cannabis plant. The CBD molecule, of course, is the single focus of attention for us. The very promising research paper that has been shared over the last couple of months, and the work that we have done internally led us to pursue this formulation and to work with the Colombian government to have a formulation that will be readily available for the prevention, the active prevention of the COVID-19 virus. And we're very hopeful that we'll be able to utilize this facility as the manufacturing facility for those formulations.
Thank you.
But once again, I think CBD is a molecule that can be utilized in multiple categories, and it's very important that we see where the consumer is going. The consumer is starting to adopt at a faster rate CBD in an ingestible form, especially in food and beverage from a recreational standpoint. A big example of what we're doing here is Casa Whole Foods, which manufactures our brands such as Mambe. We're developing beverages with the Tonino Lamborghini house that are going to be launched at the end of Q1. Those beverages will have 15 milligrams of CBD in them, and we're very excited about the early results in terms of flavor testing and adoption for consumers. But we also have a broad product portfolio that will continue to expand in the food and beverage category, and we look forward to surprising and delighting our consumers with great product categories that will have great rates of adoption. And then, as I mentioned, topicals are a very positive category. As a topical, the CBD molecule has been known to be antioxidant, to be emollient, anti-seborrheic, which is very good for the hair, and it's widely documented its benefits in its topical form, and that's why it has one of the lowest barriers of entry in terms of the regulatory and also rate of adoption. Flora Beauty is one of those examples. My Naturals is one of the 2 brands that we have launched broadly. This brand is being distributed in all of the American continent as well as parts of Europe. We're broadly distributing this brand in Walmart.com in Mexico. We have it in Falabella stores in Latin America, and we'll continue to expand the distribution of our topical products as we develop great product portfolio that are resonating with consumers, not only in the Latin American and North American space, but also in the European one.
A question that we had was around our expectations for the Mexican market, knowing that we do have a foothold now with Walmart.com and Coppel. Any other insights that you might have on the Mexican market and our current product portfolio, how we might be able to serve that market?
Yes, I mean, Jesse, we'll continue to expand. Clearly, the food and beverage category is one of tremendous interest to us. The Mexican government is putting a significant piece of legislation into their floor to make recreational cannabis and medicinal cannabis legal, and that will allow companies that actually comply with significant standards of quality to register their products and to distribute them more broadly. So we look forward to expand our distribution in Mexico. It's a significant market, the 14th economy in the world, and we have great partnerships there, as you have mentioned. We'll continue to expand.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Flora Pharma. This is one of our 3 foundational pillars of our company. And we firmly believe that scientific-based research will lead to a higher level of confidence and thus a higher rate of adoption from a consumer standpoint and from a patient standpoint. So a couple of moves that we have made. Obviously, we're working with significant, with very important institutions in Colombia, including INVIMA, the equivalent to the FDA in the United States, to ensure that we comply with the most rigorous standards and that we are developing formulations that are for the benefit of the patients. Colombia is a very interesting cradle for testing, as the Colombian government is making cannabis, medicinal cannabis, readily available to all patients in the country. In fact, earlier this year, it was announced that medicinal cannabis must be covered by insurance companies. This provides a higher level of comfort and higher rate of adoption from patients in the Colombian marketplace. But we have launched other initiatives with regards to our pharmaceutical efforts. The one that I mentioned that I want to reinforce is our clinical trials launched in partnership with the University of Manchester that are currently clearing ethics committee with the NHS for the treatment of fibromyalgia and related pain illnesses. So we look forward to the results of this research, and we look forward to continue to expand the availability of CBD and other molecules for the benefit of patients worldwide.
Great. And I think that brings us to the end of the sort of the formal part of the presentation, but we still have a couple more questions to cover off on. And if, again, if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will do our best to answer as many as we can with the couple minutes we have left. So one question that we received early on was, what is the greatest challenge in your mind for a CBD brand operating today?
Great question, Jesse. I would say, look, for every brand, is important that you focus on delivering experiences and products that resonate with consumers. And I think it's very important that you listen to the voice of the consumer and that you develop solutions for the current needs. But when it comes to CBD specifically, there has been a lot of misinformation in this industry. And that misinformation has led to a flurry of lack of trust. Where there is products that do not have the ingredients that they're supposed to have, or wrongful claims that are made on labels, or navigating the very robust regulatory environment on a global scale. Those challenges need to be met, and they generate high barriers of entry. The good news here, Jesse, is that if a company executes and is able to be incredibly transparent and maintain very high quality standards from a brand perspective, then that will build brand equity and it will build loyalty, and that loyalty will generate meaningful revenues and create an economic moat.
That's great. Thank you. So another question that we received was, so with the patchwork of regulation, how does the patchwork of regulation impact a company like Flora that's looking and currently is operating globally? How does that impact the way we approach new markets, how we are addressing our own supply chain, how we address our go-to-market strategy more broadly, knowing that there is a lack of consistency as we scale?
Yes, it's a very complex business environment. There's many ways in which you should answer that question, but the first portion is the regulatory one. If a cannabis company wants to operate on a global scale, it needs to have a very robust regulatory team that understands the ins and outs of each one of the geographies and municipalities that it operates, to ensure that it complies with the laws and the regulatory environment. So that's step one. Number two, depending on the geography in the world, supply chain has become a very complex challenge. The post-COVID era is a different game when it comes to supply chain, and we don't believe fully in vertical integration. We believe in having great partners, especially when it comes to logistics and supply chain. And you have to identify great partners in those geographies that you want to operate to provide support in terms of logistics, in terms of supply chain, in terms of distribution, that can help you navigate the environment and the culture in which you operate. And then thirdly, it's very important that you identify the needs of the specific consumers in each one of the regions in which you operate. And that means that you have to have a broad offering. And that adds complexity in terms of inventory management and product SKU, but it's a good balance between meeting the needs of consumers worldwide and maintaining a disciplined approach when it comes to inventory and product portfolio.
This leads in nicely to another question we received, which was, do we anticipate participating more in the brand direct CBD space, or evaluating more of a wholesale and distribution model as we look at CBD globally?
Jesse, I think that's a matter of the time in the time period in which we stand. So several years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, you would say that CBD companies were focused mostly on the wholesale production and the raw material business. But we have seen that raw material and the movement of flour, of oils, of distillates and isolates is very complex. And as I mentioned, there was an oversupply and a buildup of that inventory, which led to products being sold at a loss. On the other side, brands that were well developed, that have endured the test of time, that have gained some customer loyalty, are receiving better margins. So over the short term, you will see a significant focus on the development of brands and product offerings for consumers in both the recreational market and some in the medicinal market. But over the midterm, we're gonna see that the wholesale operation will stabilize, and those companies that are able to fulfill the supply and demand needs on a global scale are going to benefit from both of those revenue sources.
Fantastic. And as far as, you know, I know we have addressed a number of markets in this call today. Where, I guess the question was, does Flora plan to make or are they evaluating making a more concerted effort in any particular market as we evaluate the opportunity around CBD?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we just discussed the United Kingdom, the EU, the United States, and Latin America. From a priority standpoint for our company, Colombia is the cradle of our operation. We have our grow and extraction facility as well as our lab, and we have a government that is at the forefront in terms of the regulatory change. We're going to place emphasis in Colombia, not from an economic standpoint, but is a great testing ground, and for in terms of the regulatory environment, we will continue to place an emphasis into our Colombia operation. But in terms of economic growth, obviously the United States is the number one economy. Over 50% of cannabis revenues are coming out of the United States. There are more friendly states, and the regulatory environment, even though it's highly complex, continues to evolve, we believe, in the right direction, especially as it pertains into CBD. So we will place a lot of attention into the United States for that reason. And then over the midterm, we already mentioned in this call, Mexico will be a big player for us. We're going to continue to invest in Mexico and looking into the European market, the United Kingdom, Germany, and assets where we have planted our flags, such as Malta and Portugal, will continue to be of interest for us.
Great. And then what do you make of some of the lesser known derivatives like CBG or CBN? They have even more varied regulations around them across the global stage. So what do you see? Do you have an opinion on what their role is moving forward?
Yeah, Jesse, I mean, we are just tapping the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the benefit of the over 100 molecules. I believe it's 120 molecules that have been identified in the cannabis plant. And most of the research that has been done, which is still early stages for the research that has been done on THC and on CBD. But as you mentioned, there's other molecules in the plant that have been known to treat many ailments, such as focus, anxiety, and insomnia, like CBD, like CBN and CBG. We will continue to invest in scientific-based research, and I think as scientific research comes out and is available to us and is peer-reviewed and is reputable, we'll be able to influence and provide the necessary tools and information to regulatory entities, so they allow us to utilize it, whether it's in phytotherapeutic formulations or more formal medications, or in the recreational space with food and beverage products and other.
And then our last CBD specific question. So as more countries come online as far as either medical applications of THC or even adult use, more recreational side of things, how do you see that impacting the global CBD market, or how do you see them even growing simultaneously, or what do you see the interaction being between those two?
it's a symbiotic relationship, but it's important to highlight the differences between CBD and THC. And I think the single biggest one is the psychoactive feeling of THC. Like CBD in its purest form does not present any psychoactive effect. So a consumer, when they either have a tincture, an oil, or a gummy, they're not gonna feel the high that you would feel, the psychoactive effect that you would feel out of THC. I would expect that there will be a higher rate of adoption of CBD, and that's our expectation over the short term. The non-psychoactive component of cannabis, not only because there are many benefits that are being documented both in the recreational and the medicinal space, but also because it doesn't, it has a lower level of stigma attached around it. As the regulatory framework around THC continues to improve, then of course revenues will increase, and we'll find a balance. But you will see that many of the formulations, even the medications that are available today, have a mixture of the two. So you will see medication, of course, developed by GW Pharma. Epidiolex has only cannabidiol, but Sativex has a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC. So there are many meaningful uses and a symbiotic relationship for both. But clearly, this is a question of rate of adoption, stigma, and also barriers of entry. And the psychoactive component will present us a higher barrier of entry over the long term. We expect CBD continue to be an engine of growth for many years to come.
Great. Well, I apologize. We didn't get to every single question, but we are just about out of time. I know there were a lot of questions that came in just sort of more broadly about Flora and when we might have Q4 numbers or any earnings calls or anything like that. Is there anything you can share on that front, Luis?
Yes, of course. I mean, we certainly closed the fiscal year 2021. We're currently going through our audit of our financials. We expect to have full year financials by the end of the month of March. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll have a more formalized date in the upcoming weeks. As many of you know, we are currently a foreign private issuer, which means that we only report numbers on a biannual basis. We expect to go to a more formal communication scale at the end of the year and move to quarterly earnings calls. So look forward to that. We actually look forward to that in the spirit of course, transparency, and as we are moving the majority of our operations into the United States.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all again for being here. Thank you, Luis, for all of those insights. This, like we said, this is the first of hopefully many of these state of play conversations. So as you are signing off, if you want to drop any topics into the Q&A that you'd like to hear us cover in the future, we'd be happy to hear that feedback. And we look forward to seeing everybody here again soon.